Want to know what the movers and shakers of New Hampshire's performing arts are thinking? Welcome to New Hampshire Unscripted with your host, Ray Dudley.
All right, we're good to go. Scott, good to meet you.
You too.
I have heard your name for ages and ages. You are an icon in the state.
I am something. I'm not sure if I'm an icon.
I'm being diplomatic.
Yeah.
So. Accept it.
There are people who think highly of me. There are people who do not. And that means you've done your job, I guess, on some level.
So, I do want to eventually get to the Christmas, your Christmas special. Because I was talking with Lowell Williams, and it's a fascinating project. I'm really intrigued by all the work that goes into it, and how long it takes, and the number of people, and all of that.
It's epic. It certainly is.
Yeah, it sounds it. It sounds it. And very rewarding, though, too, on many levels.
I get paid a little, but every year, I mean, as hokey as it sounds, I run around the country and spread joy.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But right now, what I want to do is I want to find out about you, because I don't know anything about you. I've heard your name, like I said, for a long time. And so I thought maybe we could go back and talk about how you started, how you got the bug, what drives you, performances you've loved, hated. I've been on your Facebook page. You got a gajillion pictures. You've done a gajillion shows. So let's go way back. Are you a New Hampshire native? Where are you from?
I am. I was born in Manchester. Went to school here until I was around 10. Then my parents split, and I moved to Pittsfield, New Hampshire, where I went to high school. From there, went to UNH Durham. The bug probably happened in junior high school. I was the victim of schoolyard bullying, little fat kid with glasses and buck teeth and pimples and whatnot, and was getting whooped pretty regularly on the way home from school. And at one point, inadvertently in a classroom, I cracked a joke or did something funny, and one of the bullies was in that class, and he laughed. So I was on my way home on a given day, and Bully B was getting ready to, do his thing. And the other guy came around the corner and said, "You leave him alone. That's my friend." And I went, "What?" Just because I made him laugh.
Man.
So it stuck with me forever that the power of laughter / applause translates into appreciation and affection, and it's pretty much where I developed my sense of humor. Became a defense mechanism, because I knew if I could make people laugh, they would either leave me alone or, God forbid, actually like me. So that became important to me, to make people laugh, and that developed into the importance of telling stories and teaching people through the art of storytelling, which is the theater. The first time I took myself seriously as an actor, after college, which I never graduated. I'm still 4 credits short. A foreign language. I never quite got over the French hump. I aced French in high school, but got to college and I didn't retain a thing. And to this day, I was like, well, I could just take sign language, which I've always wanted to learn anyway, and that would qualify as my foreign language. But I'm years old now, so what do I care about a college degree, because I'm a performer. But I did Amadeus. I played Mozart many years and many pounds ago at the Palace in Manchester. Bob Shea, who now runs the Barnstormers up in Tamworth, and I think he's still at the Dana Center at St. A's, was the artistic director at the time. And I worked really hard on this role. I immersed myself in the music, and I studied the character, and I really worked it. Prior to that, and to this day, I'm a musical comedy clown. Research is not usually my thing. I just get out and play. But I worked really hard on this role, and pulled it off, and apparently was good enough in it to get applause and acclaim. My mom came to see it late in the run, and I was all proud. After the show, I got out there and said, "Mom, what did you think?" And she said, "Oh, honey, it was long."
Thanks, Mom.
And I went, "There's like too many notes, Mozart." I was like, oh, all right. That's nice. And it stuck with me, so to this day, I don't ever ask anyone. If someone wants to come up and say something nice, that's great, but you will never hear the words, "What did you think?" come out of my mouth again.
What year was this?
Oh, boy. 81?
Okay. Good, close enough.
I was involved in Theater by the Sea, Portsmouth, before it became Seacoast Rep. This is how old I am. Collected weeks of equity credit, and eventually they signed me to an equity contract during a production of Equus, of all things. My small part, I was the stable owner, and so from the mid-'80s on, I was a member of the Actors Union. I worked a lot in and around Boston. My record, one calendar year, I actually worked 38 weeks out of a 52-week year. And my friends were astonished. And it was because I was lucky enough that when I was in show A, I'd audition for the next one, and I'd get it, and some of them would overlap and dovetail, but 38 weeks, pretty astonishing for a single gig actor.
Wow.
So I accumulated a lot of credits, made a lot of friends, did a lot of stuff. Captain Hook at the Wheelock, Herbie in Gypsy at Stoneham, was the lead in an original musical called Car Talk. Yes, Car Talk, at Central Square. Played Pseudolus at my first run at Pseudolus in Forum at the Worcester Foothills Theater, which I don't believe exists anymore. But I was a working union actor. And then in 04, well, maybe it was 03. It was in 04. I'm a stage actor. I make big, broad, funny faces, and I'm trying to reach the back row, so I'm a big performer. I'm not, it doesn't translate all that well on screen because it's too big. It's what's the line from Tootsie? Pull back, how far? How about Cleveland? So I would audition occasionally for film stuff. And in 04, I got cast in a featured role in Fever Pitch, which is the Drew Barrymore, Jimmy Fallon Red Sox fan saga that I still get reasonable residuals from.
Congratulations.
Because every year baseball season comes around, that movie makes the rounds. Certainly the years they win the World Series, everybody watches Fever Pitch. But I remember going into that audition, and I walked into the room, and there were 50 guys just like me, just average Joe, middle-aged, beefy Red Sox fan guys, and several fairly high-level Boston area stand-up comics. And I went, what am I doing here? So I auditioned, read my thing, didn't get the role that they called me in for because it was not me. They actually originally called me in for the sponge salesman guy, who was the old guy who sat behind Jimmy and Drew. But they called me back to read for Artie, this guy whose shtick was divorced from his ex-wife, but they still share their season tickets, and they look like a perfectly happily married couple when they're at the Red Sox games, because neither one of them was going to give up their share of the ticket, so they decided that they would just share them. So I go in to read for Artie, and one of Artie's sides in the casting was he was running through a list of all the terrible things that have happened to the Red Sox over the course of the year, talking about the curse and all the things that, Bucky Dent, Bill Buckner, and Aaron Boone, and, leaving Pedro in too long, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm just reading the side, and I get finished with it, and the casting director looks at me and says, "Are you crying?" And I went, "Yeah, sorry, I got a tear in my eye." She went, No, that's what they want. Because they were just looking for authenticity, a real Red Sox fan, as opposed to an actor, and I happened to be both. So I got the gig, and I spent 10 glorious days in late September in '04, filming all the baseball scenes in Fever Pitch. Then, as legend has it, the Farrelly brothers were up in Toronto filming the rest of the movie, because it was way cheaper to film in Canada before Massachusetts did all its tax credit film industry leniency things. So they're up in Toronto. It's Game 4 of the World Series. The Red Sox are leading the St. Louis Cardinals 3-0. And they look at each other and go, "They're going to ruin our movie." Because in the movie, the Red Sox don't win, but the guy gets the girl. Yeah. Because that's what was logical to us at that time. But if the Red Sox win the freaking World Series, our movie is dead in the water. So 20th Century Fox was the movie producing organization, and Fox Television had the World Series, so there's a connection there. So they got permission. They got a single-engine plane and Jimmy and Drew and one cameraman, and they flew to St. Louis. And after the game, I'm in my living room at the time. I think I was living in Exeter, New Hampshire, weeping and leaping around the living room because they did it. They won the World Series. And in my own small way, because I was in a Red Sox movie, I helped break the curse. Then I see Jimmy and Drew kissing on the pitcher's mound. The camera is panning all over the place, and people are... and I'm going, "Oh, you lucky SOBs. Look at what celebrity, can do for you." And then I went, I'm going to get a phone call. And sure enough, literally, I think the next day, "Hey, we have to refilm the end of the movie. Are you available such and such week, such and such days?" And yes, I was. So I think we went back in late October, early November to film summertime baseball scenes.
Lucky you.
Oh, my word. But because the original movie ended in a meaningless Baltimore or Tampa Bay game, and the Red Sox lose, but he gets the girl. So they rejigged the end of the movie so that it happens during the legendary Yankee series, where Dave Roberts steals the base and Poppy hits home runs all over the place. And so it made the movie even better, because it is truly a fairy tale ending. His team wins and he gets the girl. So we got to go back and refilm and make a few extra dollars in November, doing more Fever Pitch. And I joined SAG-AFTRA. Well, it was only SAG at the time, in order to do this film. So now, fast forwarding, I'm still a member of SAG-AFTRA. Done some background stuff and a couple of other featured things, but nothing as big as the Fever Pitch project, because, as I said, I'm not really a film guy. I gave up my equity membership in 2008, 9. I stumbled into a gig as the artistic director up at Gene's Playhouse up in Lincoln. Struggling mightily at the time, had a facility that was only partially completed, trying to become a reasonable regional theater company. And my line of thinking was, well, I'll give up my union membership, because then I can act for this company and I won't have to pay big bucks for myself.
Gotcha.
In addition to whatever salary I was making as the artistic director. And while I was up there, I did Arthur in Spamalot and Quixote in La Mancha, and I was responsible for hiring and casting and all of the artistic stuff. but I didn't last very long. After 2 or 3 years, it was you can't quit, we're firing you. No, you can't fire me, I quit. So I left there. The first 2 years of the Christmas Carol tour were under the Jeans Playhouse umbrella, segueing into the Christmas Carol thing. Then when I left there, Lowell Williams and I founded Perseverance Productions with the intent to have an LLC to produce the national tour. So this will be the 4th year that we've taken Christmas Carol out under Perseverance Productions. It's actually the 6th year that this show has gone out. In the meantime, in between all those things, I've had brushes with all kinds of successful projects. I understudied Baloo in the Jungle Book musical at the Huntington, and I thought for sure I was going to Broadway with it. But first of all, I never got on, because the only time that the guy was sick enough to take the night off, I was sicker. So I never did go on. I did Sheer Madness in Boston for half a year. Loved Sheer Madness. The best paycheck I've ever gotten in the theater. A very high tier cabaret level paycheck. Sheer Madness is a improvisational whodunit. It's down at the Charles Playhouse. Been going on for years. I was the artistic director of the Peacock Players for 6 years. Right after the American Stage Festival went down the tubes, Peacock survived, and I was working for American Stage Festival as their education director at the time, and I stuck around and helped guide Peacock to become what it is now. And Keith Wyrick, who took over when I left there, it's an A+ education and theater institution for kids. I taught grades 1 through 8 drama at Hampstead Academy for 6 years, and if you had told me at some point in my career you're going to teach children for 6 years of your life and survive, I would have said no, I'm not. But I'm your typical Papa Bear, lovable, funny uncle. So I taught kids how to play, because this was at a private school, and not a knock against Hampstead Academy at all, but sometimes schools teach kids the art of not playing. You've got to pay attention, discipline, and the art of creativity and storytelling.
Conformity.
And and no matter what you do for a living, you're going to talk. No matter what you do, so you've got to learn how to express yourself and be comfortable in your own skin, and that's what theater does. So I've been all over the place, and my current blurb bio that I put in programs, I think I'm over 400 performances as either director, actor, writer, producer, and that's a lot. I'm sick. I just turned 61 a few days ago.
Congratulations! Happy birthday!
Thank you very much. And so you average it out, 400. That's 20 a year for 20 years, or but yeah, those years when I was, and I'm counting literally from college on.
Yeah.
Majored in theater but never graduated, and somehow I'm still alive to do it today. Empty wallet, full heart. I don't have 2 nickels to rub together, but that's not...
Well, you're an artist, that's why.
Right, it's not how I've chosen to live my life. But as you can tell, I have stories and memories and aplenty.
You remind me a lot of George Peele.
George is a good friend of mine.
You remind me a lot of him.
He and I worked together, and I think he would agree. We didn't always get along back then, because there is the horrible condition that actors have called an ego.
Huh.
And I thought I was something, and he thought he was something, and now that we've gotten older, we know that we're not really anything.
Huh.
But at the time, he and I butted heads a little bit, but we were funny together. I did Felix to his Oscar in The Odd Couple, even though, I mean, I'm much more an Oscar type, but did that back in the day when he was doing the Chateau Dinner Theater stuff.
I remember that.
Did a bunch of shows with George. Most recently, up at the Barnstormers, I was a favored son up there for the years before I gave up my equity card, but then I fell out of their loop after I stopped being union. But up at the Barnstormers in Tamworth, whenever there was a role for somebody who needed to learn a lot of lines in a short amount of time, I was always the Agatha Christie detective. Or another classic example would be Sidney Brule in Death Trap, who talks a lot. Or Garfinkel in Other People's Money, who talks a lot. And one of the epiphanies that I've struggled artistically over the last 6 years, and one of the recent epiphanies that I think I had was, I'm not union anymore, and I think I want to go back to playing in playgrounds where I'm not expected to be the best one up there, and I'm not the energy and artistic and charisma leader of the group. I'm just a guy keeping up with other people that are better than me.
Does that mean you want to go back to union or not? Or stay?
I'm wondering if I should, for my own artistic, mental, theatrical health. However, I don't want to pay myself union wages to do the Christmas Carol tour. And the Christmas Carol tour is really never going away. I mean, it's Christmas. It's going to be requested every year across the country. So as long as I have energy to do it, I would keep doing it. And at this point, I mean, that's a nugget we could conquer down the road if I decided I needed to be union.
Isn't there some kind of a waiver?
You could get a waiver, or pay myself some sort of a minimum wage through the company or something. But currently I am SAG-AFTRA, but not union. Do the Christmas Carol tour every year, and assorted other projects when they come up. The goal always, from the first year we did Christmas Carol, was, well, I'll get back in January and I'll bank a reasonable nugget of money, $20,000, $30,000, and that'll be my salary that I'll give myself for the year, which will allow me to go do other theatrical projects that don't pay much. We've never quite gotten to that that number, because invariably there's something that goes awry, or it's more expensive than we think it is. When the show left the Gene's Playhouse umbrella and we started our first year as Perseverance Productions, we didn't own a box of screws or a can of paint or anything, and Gene's would not sell us the costumes and props and sets. They claimed they wanted to use them themselves, and there may have been a little spite in there, I don't know. So we had to rebuild the show literally from square one. So that year certainly didn't make any money, and year two we were still recovering from that. This year, now that we keep making improvements in the product and process, and they're expensive. Now we own our own light board now. We own our own sound board. We have made modifications in the set design. So that we're carrying our own stuff, because owning is always better than renting, in order to streamline the show and make it most efficient and cost effective. And in fact, the newest news is next year, not this year, I'm going to re-jog the script to eliminate 2 actors. So it's going to be a cast of 12, not 14. With all the requisite hotel room salaries, it'll save us a pretty penny. Christmas Carol is a show that's designed that people play multiple parts anyway, right. So it's just a matter of me being clever and creative with condensing the thing a little bit.
Is this your own version of it?
Yeah. When I was at the Peacock Players, I want to say 3 years in, we wanted to do some sort of a Christmas project. So I said, I'll write a Christmas Carol. I'll adapt one. And it was designed for a youth audience and young actors, so it was a modernized version. I played Scrooge, it's sort of this guest artisty thing. And it was, Scrooge was an investment banker. Marley came out of his television set. Christmas Past was this wisecracking overalls wearing street kid. Christmas Present was this seedy department store Santa Claus. There's a bunch of pop culture references. The music was all modern Christmas carols, designed, for a kids 5 and up to appreciate the story. Sometimes, and kids appreciate Christmas Carol anyway, but sometimes Dickens can get a little dense in his language. I have seen your nobler aspirations fall off one by one until the master passion gain engrosses you. What did she just say? I think she's breaking up with him. This is one of the examples. Sometimes he's not exactly Shakespearean, but he can get a little dense. So I modernized the language in the show for kids. When we had the opportunity to take the tour on the road, I realized that nobody wants to see your clever modernized version. You better readapt it back to a more traditional Dickensian setting. But in doing so, it kept a lot of the buoyancy and humor and charm of the kids' version. And we're told frequently there's 2 companies of major import. Well, I'm not sure if we call ourselves major import, but the Nebraska Theater Caravan takes a national tour of Christmas Carol out every year. And theirs is extremely different from ours. It's really quite traditional. On almost every occasion when a venue has had them and then us, they rave about our interpretation of it. It's still traditional. There's nothing weird about it, except that we have a 24-foot wide by 12-foot tall rear projection screen, which is our backdrop, so that with a push of a taskbar on a QLab program, the scenery can whisk from inside his office to the street, to his bedroom, to celestial traveling through space. We can animate the backdrop so you get rolling fog and falling snow and comets and shooting stars, and it's the magic of Christmas is in that wall. Nobody else that I'm aware of does the show like that, and that's our Matt Kaiser, who's the technical guru up at Plymouth State College, gets the credit for designing this stuff. It's really, really good. And the show, because I'm my roots as a clown, it's funnier than people expect it to be. Not in a Bill Murray Scrooged kind of spoofy funny, but at its best moments, Scrooged is heartfelt and it's honest, and at the end you get tears in your eyes because the guy has been redeemed. But there's a lot of human comedy in My Christmas Carol. There's a conceit that survived from the original adaptation where I have 3 narrators. In this version, it's 3 female narrators are gathered around a fire barrel, warming their hands at the top of the show. Funny old Cockney women. And as the show develops, they become Mrs. Cratchit, Mrs. Fezziwig, and nephew Fred's wife, Millie. And they hop in and out of roles. And because they've set up this conceit of narrator, they can just turn to the audience and literally do narration and then step right back into the show. So it makes the show, there's an energy there. And they're antic and funny and silly. And some stuff in the show is just there for funny. And during the redemption, Scrooge's redemption scenes, I will admit that I do get a little carried away going for the laughs.
I heard a rumor.
Because it's, I don't know, if I've reduced them to tears at the end of Act 1, which is the show is designed to do, Scrooge is a puddle on the floor of broken man. And a lot of the comments I get after the show, always go out to the lobby. I don't normally like the dog and pony show of, glad handing and receiving lines and stuff, but Tiny Tim and I will go out to the lobby. It's Christmas for photo ops and handshakes, and we get a lot of people who remark how moved they were.
Nice.
I've seen Christmas Carol a million times, but I never cried for him. And I'm thinking, well, that's the essence of the storytelling. If you cry for him and you feel for him, then at the end when he's kicking up his heels and laughing and giggling and making terrible jokes and dancing around the streets, you're laughing with him. And it's an appreciation of the journey and the magic of the holiday. Scrooge isn't the villain of this piece at all. He's the hero. And if we've done our job and his journey has been an emotional one from beginning to end, and I go fully for the nasty in the beginning, in that office scene where he's mean and he's cruel, and I got this tidbit from Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter. I heard some interview of his where somebody asked him, how can you go there as an actor? And he made some reference to it, enjoying the evil just as much as you would enjoy your joy. That for a character like Hannibal Lecter, to find joy in his evil. So my Scrooge actually gets a kick out of making Cratchit uncomfortable, and he uses wordplay, and he's clever, and he gets a lot of human comedy laughs because he's sarcastic in his bitterness. One of the biggest laughs in the show, just as sight gaggery, for an example, he gets home to his bedroom and he's changing into his night clothes and muttering about Christmas and all these terrible things that Christmas is, and he's just seen Marley's face in the door. So he takes off his overcoat, he takes off his other coat, he takes off his ascot, and he unbuttons his vest, and he has pants or has suspenders on, and the audience is watching this guy get undressed in front of them with a little bit of discomfort. And I drop my pants, and the shirt that he's wearing is his night shirt, and it falls all the way to the floor. The essence that Scrooge is so cheap he won't even buy a separate shirt, so nobody sees anything. It's a huge laugh, and a laughter of recognition that yes, that's the skinflint that we know and love, but shown in a humorous way. Yeah. So there's a lot of those in the show, a lot of Easter eggs, we call them in the biz, gotchas, little surprises that people have not seen in any other production of Christmas Carol.
Does it play here in the local area before it
does.
takes off?
What a great segue, Ray. I was just going to say, the only chance to see it locally is at the Stockbridge Theater at Pinkerton in Derry on the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. We're going to rehearse the show in Rochester, which is where we've rehearsed it the last several years. Many of the company are from the Seacoast area, and we have a rehearsal space in Rochester. Then for Tech Week, we're going to pack everything up and move it to the Stockbridge. We had done the show at the Rochester Opera House the last couple of years, but the show is big. It's a big, unwieldy, large thing that doesn't really fit in the confines of the Rochester Opera House, which is a small, beautiful old venue with a really rickety old service elevator in the back that makes our load in and load out quite inefficient. So Matt Cahoon at Pinkerton is a friend of Lowell's and I, and we met with him late January of last year, and they said, yeah, we're looking for programming like this, family-friendly holiday fare. So we have an arrangement with them that we'll tech and preview the show at the Stockbridge, and which is an enormous space where we can spread everything out, fix the fixes, retouch up the paint, mount the show properly so that we're ready technically when we hit the road. So it's November 26th at 7 p.m.
Am I invited?
You absolutely. We're all invited. And we had originally planned a couple of nights, but at this point we're only going to do one, and I think they will reserve the right if the show sells out that we might do it on Wednesday night as well. Then the company gets Thursday off, and Black Friday morning we hit the road for the
shopping.
No shopping, no, absolutely none. Hit the road for the national tour portion of our program. This year we're compromised a little bit because Thanksgiving is late in November. It's on the 28th. Last year it was on the 23rd. So we lost
a full week,
arguably 5 performance dates. At its height, and the show is limited. It's from Thanksgiving to Christmas, that's its window.
Right.
And ain't nobody going to it prior to that or after that. So we're limited to how many shows we can shove into a 30-ish day span. This year it's 23 days. At its height, I think last year, we grossed $250,000. It's a big project. Of course, we spend about $160,000,
yeah,
so
Lowell had told me.
it's expensive. Casting, hotels, rental of vehicles to move, technical equipment.
I mean, you're like a caravan, aren't you, when you go out?
Yeah, we travel in 3 large SUVs, Cadillac Escalade size, 8-passenger, implying that there's a lot of room in the back for luggage, and a 27-foot box truck with a lift gate, which has all the costumes and set pieces and props and furniture and stuff. Everything breaks down into relative flat format so it can stack in the truck.
Nice.
Then we unload everything, and with the magic of pins and wires and hinges and things, it all gets a 3-dimensionality. But this year, not 250, but more like 222. So $28,000 less in the budget. Ouch. So
It's almost 10%.
Yeah, and luckily we were smart enough to have purchased some things that we now own as opposed to renting them, so we can afford to do this. We pay reasonably well. We're not outrageous, but that's part of the minutia of putting this thing together is the budget. And borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, and one pocket goes into the other. And 2 years ago, we created a business advantage account with Best Western Hotels, so that by the end of the tour, we've booked so many hotel rooms on the drive home with the truck. All the rooms are free because we're just using points.
Oh,
right?
geez, that's brilliant.
So there's a week of hotel rooms on the way home that are free now that weren't before. We always rent the vehicles from Enterprise, so we've established some points with them for vans for the rehearsal period and whatnot. I'm pretty sure that Lowell's worked on some sort of frequent flyer miles because we fly everyone home at the end.
Oh, you do?
Yep. Yeah, this year.
Why is that? Is you already have the vehicles? Why
Yeah,
not?
well, except the final show is always something like December 23rd.
Oh.
And so in order to get people home for their holidays, the vehicles, except for the truck, are on a one-way rental. So we pick them up in Rochester, New Hampshire, and this year we drop them off at the Portland, Oregon airport. The past 4 years, we have closed the tour in Beaver Creek, Colorado, which is essentially Vail, which is beautiful, beautiful. But the Rockies in the last week of December make me frightened.
The Overlook Hotel.
Oh boy, yeah. It's beautiful, but it's dangerous. So the SUVs are all in a one-way rental. So the company at the end of our last show will just drive to the airport, drop them off, and we pay for all their flights home, wherever it is they happen to be going. Most of them Manchester or Boston, but several people are going elsewhere around the country. Then someone drives the truck home. That would be me.
I see.
2 years ago, Lowell and I did it together. Last year, Lowell didn't go on the tour, and I drove the truck myself, and I found it actually quite therapeutic and peaceful.
Lowell, did you hear that?
Yeah, and he knows it. I'm going to do it again this year. given weather, I mean, you get caught in a blizzard, but driving for 6 days across the byways of
With Lowell.
Well, yeah. So, but this year from Portland, Oregon, or essentially Kelso, Washington, that's where my last hotel is, to Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So
In a truck. Yeah.
So
are you kidding?
Given the weather, which I'll be watching like a hawk, I think I'd be insane to drive through Montana and the Dakotas at the end of December. That just sounds like a blizzard waiting to happen. Even slightly south of that through, say, Des Moines, Cheyenne, our route this year takes us, it's actually the best itinerary we've ever had. There are no overnight drives. In the past there have been. The first show's in West Virginia, then we go to North Carolina, Shreveport, Louisiana, then 5 shows in and around Texas, including Galveston, where we've been every year since we opened this tour. They have a big, huge Dickens weekend there, and we are always the centerpiece of that celebration for them. Galveston is a beautiful, beautiful city, right on the Gulf Coast, so there we are cavorting in the ocean in early December. 5 shows in and around Texas, then 5 shows in and around New Mexico, and then a 2.5-day drive from New Mexico up to Washington State, where we close with another 5 shows or so. But it's all a pretty straight shot. It's a lot of miles, and some days all we do is drive. Some days get up at 7 in the morning, drive 5 hours, get to a venue, unload the truck, do the show, load the truck back up, hit a hotel, lather, rinse, repeat for the next day. I believe we have 18 performances in 23 days. On a couple of occasions, there's a matinee and an evening performance at the same place. And it's exhausting. It's hard work. For people who enjoy that kind of thing, it's extremely rewarding, traveling the country and basically spreading joy.
Have you been able to bring back the same cast year after year?
It varies from year to year. I've never brought back the total group. To be frank, the first couple of years I didn't want to. There's some actors that I identify on the road as, this person is really good and I want them involved with this as long as they want to be involved with this. Last year, there were maybe half a dozen folks who had done the tour before, and that's become always the kind of math equation that works. You have some people that are experienced and know what to expect because there are slings and arrows and they can help guide. But the more we do it, the more I find there's a need for new blood every year, new energy, new wide-eyed anticipation. Last year's tour, without going into any details, was not a good one. There were a lot of speed bumps and roadblocks and bad choices by me. So I decided to turn the Etch-a-Sketch upside down and erase everything. So this year's company, save for one actress and myself, is new. There are 3 other people who were in the show 2 years ago or beyond, so they have familiarity with the show. But there's only 2 returning people from last year. I'm nervous about that, but I think it's a good thing because every once in a while you gotta shake it up. So through no fault of their own, the old guard that was in the show last year, I just said, thank you for your service, but and I think they might have been just fine not coming back, because
it has to be a lot of work.
It's a burnout. There's a burnout factor.
Yeah.
And every so often on tour, I stay in a room by myself. Everybody else is doubled up in hotel rooms. But
who wants to be with the little?
No, nobody wants to be with the boss. Especially, I just need to go decompress and turn on the sports channel and get a 6-pack of IPA and a pizza, and do the couch potato thing, which I never do otherwise. But so on an annual basis, in a perfect world, you have a company that gets along and loves one another and all signs up for the next year. But we actors are a flighty lot, and you get a better gig, you get a better offer, you get a union offer, you get it. We've actually lost several really good people to teaching because that was their true love. They wanted to teach, and they got a full-time job as opposed to this actor thing where you have a job and you're wondering where the next paycheck is going to come from after that. So this year on the tour, I'll be paying attention and keeping an eye out for. Right now, I want them all back because I don't know any better.
Yeah,
right? Individually, I think I've got a really, really, really good company, but until you start mixing the ingredients, as Bill Parcells demanded, they're not going to let you buy the groceries.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what the chemistry experiment will be.
I want to take a minute and talk about you. I appreciate all that you just unfolded. And one of the reasons I want to talk to you about you is in your dialogue, I can sense this passion that not all actors necessarily have. There are people who act because it's their bowling night out, or it's their softball league, it's their whatever. Then there are people who this is what they were kind of born to do. They could not do anything else. They wouldn't know what else to do. You seem to fall into that latter category of somebody. When you talk about being an artist and you talk about your craft and you talk about the things you have done, there's within you, in my opinion, a wisdom, a sentimentality, an intimacy about what you do that I don't necessarily get from a lot of folks. So peel that apart for me a little bit. Where does that come from? I mean, you had mentioned earlier about the bullying thing, and I'm sure that you extract some of those feelings from the early years and put that into your performances and can use that. Where's the rest of that passion coming from?
The bullying thing was essentially the linchpin for my leaning towards comedy, towards being funny, towards making people laugh. I always joke that I have no other marketable skills. So what else would I do anyway? But you're dead on. I don't know what else I would do. Last year, parenthetically, was a very, very difficult professional theater year for me. And in the midst of a very difficult summer of trying to produce stuff, I was questioning whether this was really what I wanted to do, because for the first time, the joy was waning, and that felt awful. So I spent personally the last 3 months or so in relative fortress of solitude, sort of rebuilding, reworking, and for a time I thought, I'm just going to do Christmas Carol. That's the only thing I'm going to do, and then I'm just not going to pursue theater things over the course of the year. It's just too taxing and hard, and I'm older and all that, blah, blah, blah. I'm a card-carrying member of Mensa. I have a very overactive brain, and all that means is your capacity to learn, not that how smart you are. People would get confused. Oh, you're Mensa. You think you're so smart. No, it's just that I was double promoted in grade school from grade 3 to 5, and that was during the bullying years. So I was confused about friends. I was confused about where I belonged. Making people laugh and telling the stories, I recognized early that I was good at it. So that's where I personally became comfortable and felt most worthy. I have an overactive search for my worth on this planet, and it certainly isn't in my wallet, as I've joked about, but what's your legacy? What are you going to leave behind? And so the getting people to laugh thing has developed into storytelling. It's not just laughter, but it's, can I get someone to think, to cry, to reflect, which is what theater is. The best theater is that which holds a mirror up to its audience and has them leaving arguably better for it, better for the experience. So I am firmly in the camp. Yeah, reading, writing, and arithmetic, yes, but the arts have got to be part of our culture, and maybe the most important part of what keeps us human. So I am completely convinced that it's an important thing to be doing, and I am no longer overwhelmed by my importance. It's not. I used to have an ego as a kid, and now I'm just trying to be relevant. I'm just trying to stay active and alive. And I guess the Christmas Carol tour is the perfect place for that, because it's around the holidays where people's emotions are pretty frayed anyway. And if I've made someone cry or laugh or think or reflect on the holiday or their relationship with their family or their relationship with their faith or all the things that first of all, Mr. Dickens wrote a bloody good tale. It's important. It's special. It makes me feel special. It has cost me relationships along my long and winding road. People who thought they understood when I said, the theater is my mistress. You must understand this. She takes lots of my energy and time and focus. Oh yeah, no problem. Well, then it becomes a problem because I'm not sure I actively communicated how much of my energy she would take, and they weren't aware of the depth of my passion. I don't expect everybody to be as intense or passionate about what they do as I am, because it's exhausting to be me, frankly. But that's how I pursue my craft. If I'm going to play Pseudolus, and a funny thing happened on the way to the forum, I'm going to find every single nugget of humor that I can pull out of that thing. My favorite role of all time is not Ebenezer Scrooge. I've played Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof, which is, again, a George Peele similarity, 8 times now. And in my opinion, Tevye is the perfect example of the quintessential male musical comedy role. He's wise, he's heartbroken, he's sad, he's hilarious, he's a fool, he's everything. In ways, for example, Quixote in Man of La Mancha is not given permission in the script to be as goofy as Tevye does, although when I've played it, I really go for the befuddled old man angle, because ultimately La Mancha is a story about Cervantes telling his story. So it's Cervantes, the actor, acting a role, on multiple levels. But when there is no greater feeling for me than the end of a show, the applause, or the big rolling laugh that you're about to get, because it's that sense of acceptance and love. For that moment, it feels like love, which is probably way too philosophical, but
it is a type.
Yeah, I mean, I give everything I can, hoping to get acceptance, appreciation back. So it's in my DNA. It's sometimes I feel most at home in my own skin when I'm doing a show, when I'm acting a role. Sometimes when I'm being Scott, I'm a little funky. Um, my friends will tell you that, or I'll tell you, I have a reputation as I'm a curmudgeon. I am Ebenezer Scrooge. I've always got a frown on my face. Pretty grumpy most of the time. In fact, this Fortress of Solitude time that I spoke about, I'm working really hard to maintain or focus on the positive things. And then somebody will say something stupid, or you'll observe some human being not behaving humanly, and you go, "Ugh, we're sharing the planet with that." But in general, I tend to lean more towards the negativity rather than the sort of blind optimism. You will hardly ever see me on Facebook post a meme about "have a good day, there's flowers out there," you know.
With a little kitty.
Yeah. I mean, I'm spending a lot of time on exercises for myself, posting. I played an ABC game with myself a month ago, where I found a bunch of people who had an A in their beginning their first or last name, and I just said, "I love you," 25 people with A, and then the next day I did B, and the next day I did C, and it caught on after a while, and I had friends of mine going, "Oh, I can't wait for S." But that's not normally my style. I generally, as a theater technician, will focus on the things that need to be fixed or that aren't good yet, than to lavish that sort of faint praise on someone. You know, "Oh, that's so good." I work better with directors who have pushed me. "Yeah, that's good, but it could be better." So I'm a hard boss, but I'm harder on myself than I am on any actor that I see. But it's all I know how to do. And as I approach what I assume is the final third of my life, I'll just keep doing this until I physically can't do it anymore.
So the feedback loop of giving the performance, hearing back from the audience. There are some folks who perform who kind of brush that off as though they don't really need it. It's there and they like it. They just like performing. There's another segment which some of us fall into where we really do kind of need that. I don't call it a pat on the back, but we have to empty ourselves. It's incumbent upon us when we take upon a role to make sure that at the end there is no more that we're taking home with us. It's not coming home. It's staying out there. Do you find yourself in that way, and have you matured over the years in your performances as you
learn? When I was 40 years old, I had both of my hips replaced. Not at the same time, but right around the Fever Pitch filming, I just had a bad arthritic hereditary condition, and the doctor said, "I don't know how you're walking right now. You can come in any time and get these dealt with." And at the time, I was covered by a really good Actors Equity insurance plan, so I went, I better deal with this now. So the fall of 2004, I had my left hip done. In the spring of 2005, I had my right hip done. And as I've gotten older, I have back issues, and things aren't as oiled as well as they used to be, so it hurts. Physically, adrenaline is that wonderful drug where you get through it, and sometimes at the end of A Christmas Carol, for example, where I've hurled myself from one end of the emotional spectrum to the other, and I'm up and down off the floor multiple times, and there's physical comedy, and there's shtick, and there's nonsense. I'll sit in my dressing room after the show, and it's hard to get out of that chair. It hurts. But that's part of the mental strength of knowing that you just left it all out there emotionally and physically. And this personal satisfaction of a good day's work still sticks with me. You do learn tricks as you get older that I don't have to. I had a bad tendency when I was younger. I'd blow my voice out because I was attacking things so hard and with full volume, and as opposed to the craft of acting where you can be shouting but not putting the rasp in your throat and hurting yourself. Or if there's a physical bit where you're supposed to fall over the back of the bed, Lend Me a Tenor style. I played Tito Morelli in Lend Me a Tenor. And that requires a physicality and a glibness, which I used to be really good at as a physical clown. I could gesture and contort and mug with the best of them. I can't do that much as well anymore. So there are tricks that you learn to cut corners without compromising your work. But I'm a huge competitor. Giant sports fan. I play fantasy sports. I do all that stuff. And my biggest competition to this day is still, can you be better in this show than you were in the last show you were in? Can you comport yourself better? Can you find that a better laugh? Can you tell the story in a more quality way? And Christmas Carol allows me every year to go attack the same piece. And even now I'm driving in the car, I'm sort of going over some lines in my head and thinking, I can pull back on that. That's just as effective if I, save a droplet of energy. Because the biggest trick to playing Ebenezer Scrooge, he probably was no older than 50 or 60 in his day, which makes him appear like he's an 80-year-old guy. I'm 61 now, but frequently when you're trying to cast someone of age to play that role, when you get to the end and you need the most energy out of the actor because of the redemption stuff, tank's empty. They got nothing left. Yeah. When the arc is still got to go up all the way to final curtain and embrace with Tiny Tim. Sometimes that's hard. I'll get there and I'll go, come on, baby, just a few more lines. We can do this.
Matinees bother me.
The double headers are not easy.
Yeah, I mean, if you've done it properly, depending on the show, of course, it's very difficult. Well, let's see how I can put this. So, if you've done a late night show and you have to do a matinee the next day, and you have really gone and emptied the tank the night before, I have a difficult time fully recharging in time for that matinee the next day. Which means that if there's a show that night of the matinee, things are really rougher. Yeah, sometimes,
rarely, I hate it when I do this, but you'll dial back because it's only kids, or it's only senior citizens, or it's only, and that's not good. Christmas Carol's a good example. Generally, we perform for a mixed bag of audience. It's families, and there are children there, and senior citizens, and 30-somethings, and whatnot. Kids can sometimes be a tricky audience, just like when you're playing a high school or college. We played a couple of high schools on the tour, and they're just not savvy enough or experienced enough to understand what live theater is. So if there's kissing, Scrooge has a line in our script where Fred says, "Come, Uncle, join us for Christmas dinner tomorrow." And Scrooge's response is, "I'll see you in hell first." Grumpy old man responds, "But the word hell, oh my goodness." The junior high kids just lose their mind for a few minutes. But we're smart enough now that we know that I'm not going to say that at that particular show, but I hate when I recognize that I'm mailing it in. Sometimes you're only human. You can only do. Fiddler on the Roof's a good example. The poor bastard doesn't leave the stage, from one giant epic number to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. And then in Act 2, it's all sad. So you're just emotionally spent. Days when there were doubleheaders of Fiddler, those were really difficult. Christmas Carol's arguably the same way. There's no specific set of tricks or things I pull out of my bag. It's just sometimes you gotta bail. Physically, funny story. I don't know how funny this is. Beaver Creek, Colorado is 11,000 feet in the air. So one of the things that this theater is equipped with is an oxygen station off stage right.
Seriously?
Yeah. Beautiful theater, and the walls are adorned with very famous people who have played this place. So whenever our company would play there, and for the last 5 years we played, the first year we're not at Beaver Creek. I think they're in every other year now. They will show the company the oxygen station and go, if you feel lightheaded, here's how this works. And there's all the tricks. There's a sheet that tell you to stay very, very hydrated. That's one of the things, getting oxygen into your system. But there was one early year, maybe even year 1, might have been. I was cavorting around Scrooge's bedroom, leaping and kicking, and it's all here, it's all here. And I saw the Tweety birds flying around my head, and I went, I'm going to go down. And it's one of those moments where, very few moments where the human being steps out of character, and I got myself back, but I was very gentle with myself for the rest of the show, because I couldn't leave and go get that oxygen. But I saw the Tweety birds, and that feeling where you go, I'm about to pass out, because I was hyperventilating. I was not breathing properly. That was just one. I should write a book. Somebody said you should write anecdotes about this tour. It's a pipe dream at some level. I'd love to bring along a film crew and do a documentary of a year in the life. Of course, that will be the year when nothing goes wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
Show gets canceled.
Yeah. Right.
Can't even walk.
Right. But last year would have been a good one for the things that could have gone wrong. Vehicular traffic, bad apples in the company, technical malfunctions, and when people are exhausted and stressed, sometimes we're not at our best. So it's we've learned now. I constantly reminding the company, hydrate, take your vitamins, pay attention, take care of yourselves. And we travel with a big kit of echinacea, elderberry syrup, airborne, everything. So when you feel the hint of something happening, we're pumping those vitamins.
Pretty impressive.
Because we're literally living, sleeping, breathing, working in a contained group with 18 people for 6 weeks. And if somebody catches something and we don't keep it under control, one year we had 3 separate gals contracted this bronchitis, which I guess was what it was. We had 3 separate trips to an emergency care. People that get steroids and whatnot.
Did you have to cancel any performances?
Nope, we never have. One performance we had to rearrange the casting because the girl literally couldn't speak, so somebody else learned the role and stepped in and did it. The stories I could tell.
So how about Perseverance itself? Now, Where is it going? Do you have shows coming up? I'm deeply interested in knowing, is there a role you have yet to play which you are dying to play in the future? And because you are your own group, so you can make that decision.
We've tried to expand our local footprint, just doing more shows. Last spring, we presented a production of Stones in His Pockets.
Right.
Beautiful.
Did it at the Players Ring,
Irish
right?
play. No,
Did you?
Hatbox in Concord.
Oh.
I pitched it at the Players Ring, but they didn't take it.
Got you.
So did it at the Hatbox and then brought it to RPAC, Rochester Performance and Arts Center, for a couple weeks after that. This year, back at the Hatbox in the spring of 2020 with the 39 Steps, a play that I am deeply in love with. I've done it a couple times and is a perfect example of clever storytelling, wordcraft, creativity, creating something out of nothing, boxes and A-frame ladders and a chair and a window and a door. That's your, adore that play, and we'll be bringing that to the Hatbox March 27th to April 12th.
Which is not that far.
It's, as soon as we get back from the tour, I'll spend a couple days with my head in the sand, and then we hit that going. For the past 2 summers, I personally have produced stuff at the Rochester Opera House, loosely under the guise of Perseverance Productions, but not. I was paying all the bills myself, and kind of Lowell gets mad at me for this, or got mad at me for this, because I'm not going to do it anymore, for using the company name, because he's liable as a limited partner if something were to go awry, and but water under the bridge at this point. So 2 summers ago, I did a funny thing happened on the way to the Forum in Rochester, and last summer I produced an original USO kind of show and Pirates of Penzance, neither of which had a royalty attached to them, so I was saving some money there. But where Perseverance goes in the future, our booking agent is interested in other things from us. They love our work. So there is a possibility that there is something else cooking, which I will not talk about now. So to suffice to say, Lowell may go out on a tour in future Christmases, and I'll take Christmas Carol out, because the second project would be largely his. So we're looking, around for additional projects to do. If we could do more than 1 tour a year, maybe I don't have to be exerting all that energy on other projects, because those 2 things would pay enough and or take up enough of my artistic time. Maybe my destiny is just to become, the New Hampshire touring guy, national touring guy. The role that I want to do, bucket list A, B, C, D, E, and F, is Max Bialystock in The Producers.
Oh, wonderful.
I haven't played it yet, and my friends are like, "What? What do you mean?
Yeah, that is shocking.
You haven't played Bialystock yet?" Because every time someone does it, it's often precast, or I'm never available to audition for it, and I'm getting just a little long in the tooth for it now. I don't know that Perseverance could afford to produce a show like that, because it's big. We can afford little things at the Hatbox and the Players Ring. We can afford those, and I've got a laundry list of 2 or 3 character, 4 character things that I present, as long as the Hatbox thing works for us. But anyone out there looking to do The Producers, I'm your guy.
Collaboration is good.
Yeah. So where the company goes from here, 1 foot in front of the other, trying to survive this next 6-week ordeal, and I don't mean that the way the word. I have a great deal of affection for this silly Christmas Carol project of mine. I'm like a mama lion. Don't you screw with my Christmas Carol. Although criticism is fine, and doubling back on a point you made, I still do not ask anyone, what did you think? Even after Christmas Carol, I'll just stand there, and people will come over and shake my hand and feel free to make a comment. I never ask. So it's sort of a weird double-edged sword where I don't seek the opinions and affection, but boy, are they nice when they come up. And lovely old gentleman last year came up and warmly shook my hand, and he said, "Alistair Sim was always Scrooge to me until tonight."
Oh.
And I went, cue tears. I just lost it.
Yeah.
Every once in a while you get one of those.
Sure.
Those kind of comments that I know I really affected that elderly gentleman that night, and that's all I needed. And the laughter of a child is still one of the greatest things on God's earth.
Yeah.
When a kid giggles at something Scrooge has done, stop me. Just stop me.
All right, well, let me close this down. I don't know what's going on with this, but I know you're a busy man.
Yeah, I got a meeting at 2:00 in Epping with a friend of mine who's a published author, because I'm interested in getting my script published.
Nice.
Might as well make an extra couple of bucks,
Yes.
right?
There's nothing wrong with money.
Right. And this happened because out of the blue, some woman in Kentucky. I was looking to do A Christmas Carol with my students, and I stumbled across your YouTube video, and your script is amazing. Is it available? I don't see why not. I have no idea. So she sent me a template for some sort of contract, and a high school in eastern Kentucky is going to do Scott Severance's version of Christmas Carol.
Yeah, that's sweet.
So I was like, why would I not make that available?
And you might make a buck at it at the same time.
Well, that's the thing. And, annually, I mean, I only charge her like $250, and I think my friends value lowball.
Dude, let me tell you something. I built a thing called a rocket mass heater in my house.
Mm-hmm.
Charted what we did along the way. Long story short, I made a little booklet, threw it up on Amazon. That foolish little book kicks out, averages $100 a month.
Yeah.
Like clockwork.
Yeah.
It has for the past 5 years. It's in Japan. It's in Hungary. It's in Russia. It's in German. Dude, write that book.
Right.
Write that book. You deserve to write.
Because once it's out there, then it's just a matter of
yes,
collecting.
yes.
Right? Yeah. So Lowell's the one who put the bug in my ear. Said you should really publish your script, because it's Christmas Carol. So people are always looking for versions of this. And many theaters are adapting their own version of it because you can. But on a high school level, and this woman she said, can I get your projection package? And I hooked her up with my TD, and he sold her a projection package. And she said, what about the music? And we sent her the song was, so I was like, yeah, kind of a no-brainer.
Well, get out of this podcast studio. Go sit with your lawyer or wherever you do and get those royalties done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ray.
Thank you so
Really
much.
a pleasure to meet you.